As we dig into strategy instruction this week, I'd like you to make sure you've taken a look at the image on the first slide that is the nested structure of special education terms. And this is really where we've been narrowing down this semester. And we talked about some of the more global and larger concepts and theories, and we're bringing it right down to now directly addressing needs through explicit instruction for individual students in our general education classrooms. We talk about specially designed instruction, which is really provided by the special education faculty and staff. We talk about high leverage practices, which are those evidence-based pieces from chapter 6 that we really dive into. Explicit instruction, and now down to intensive instruction. Strategy instruction is a part of explicit instruction. Explicit instruction teaches a skill. Strategy instruction really teaches us how to approach instruction and learning. We teach our students how to be ready to learn. We've been working towards this, and these kinds of strategies can be embedded into content. They have a ton of authentic practice and modeling that we can do for students. Probably one of the best things about strategy instruction is that we can design it with a certain student with disabilities or with specific needs in mind, and it likely benefits all of the students in our class as we address some of those needs in executive functioning. And all teachers can support this. Again, it's the front loading of how to approach learning. I think sometimes we look past this and we don't think about these things, or we don't think we have time to learn these things. And I'm here to tell you that they're essential, and our students won't learn what we need them to learn without these strategies. I think a lot of instructors, a lot of school staff, myself included, as students get older, we just assume they have these skills. We're going back to the very tenets of explicit instruction and what we talked about last week with behaviors. But these must be explicitly taught and then monitored. We can't assume all students know how to approach learning. We need to design our instruction around that. This week, I've kept my lectures shorter because we're a little bit reading and print heavy. I gave you a lot of slides to look at for executive functioning skills. What I would like you to do now is to dive into the next couple of slides and click through and make a copy of your strategy instruction assignment. Let's do a little bit of our own backwards planning. I'd like you to think about using these strategies before we read about them. I want you to think of a student you might have in mind that needs support in these executive functioning strategies, whether it be with social, emotional, and behavioral issues, or specific academics, engagement, time on task, self-regulation and self-determination, being confident and initiating things. Have a student in mind, have your assignment in mind, and then dig into a quick review of chapter 6. We're really using that in last week and this week's lectures. And then those 3 articles I've provided for you. They're not very long, and they're really excellent resources. One of them is on homework strategies. Gives you a brief discussion, definition of exactly what they're talking about, and then a brief discussion of the really strong evidence that independent practice at home gives students. And then it lays out a way for you to teach students to use homework monitoring and self-regulation strategies. That one is specifically, if I remember correctly, that one is specifically for students with developmental disabilities. But with all 3 of these articles, don't go by the labels. Do what we should be doing and go based on student need. Don't let the educational disability labels in the titles throw you off. Think about what your students need and read with that lens and choose your strategies with that lens. Another article, the other article, is for self-regulation strategies. That one is specifically for our students with learning disabilities. Again, don't focus on the label, but students with learning disabilities are a major portion of the population of the students that we reach. I think the most important part of this article is specifically the teaching of SRSD, self-regulated strategy development. And it ties in beautifully with our discussions about explicit instruction from the last 2 weeks. There is a list of self-regulation strategies with steps behind it, but also specific ways to tie it into writing, reading, and math. Very specific strategies to use. The last article is for students who might be anxious. It doesn't have an educational disability label tied to it. I think this is one of the most beneficial that we can use, especially in this day and age. It again talks about how anxiety gets in the way of engagement and how it can be a secular downfall. And it has a very simple 4-step plan to teach students how to get beyond that. It has a flow, how they can be set up to transition, stop what they're doing with a plan, shift their activity and their thinking with a visual, and then initiate and engage in a new activity through accommodations. I really also appreciated the part in there about inaccurate or negative thinking. When I was a teacher in the public schools, that's something I kind of struggled with my students because I didn't have all of the tools at my disposal to teach them strategies to get out of that downward spiral. Those are our articles. I've also provided a slide, I think that's up after your assignment, to talk about chapter 6. And the assignment's pretty explicit. Review that before you do your reading, and then complete your assignment. The strategy instruction assignment is not due for 2 weeks. It's due at the end of our next module or week, but please contact me if you have any questions about that. Please read that assignment carefully. I'd like you to use the lesson plan template, and I'd like you to use a student with an IEP. If you'd like to get creative and you have a student that you work with that this would be applicable for and would be a natural extension, please contact me before you attempt that assignment, and we will absolutely modify and jump in and make it something that you can use. Good luck with this reading and with this assignment, and as always, let me know if you have questions.